No politics, all Hawkeyes. Today, Locked On Hawkeyes, we will talk with Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. A look at the numbers from Pro Football Focus and grading out the win against Wisconsin. Plus, we hear from Kirk Ferentz after his press conference. All today, Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, let's get into it today. We got Scott Dochterman still coming up today. A lot of Iowa football talk with him, the Big Ten as a whole, as we get ready. And of course, the initial rankings come out for the college football playoff and the 12-team bracket, though Iowa not in the top 25. There was a 3-loss team in there, though, in Louisville, but we know that dream is dead. Let's get into it, though, and kick things off with a couple of different things. Start with the press conference from Kirk Ferentz. We got the numbers from Pro Football Focus. Always like to dive into those. But up first, Kirk Ferentz press conference that went like many of them did. I don't think there were any high-level things to come away. Cade McNamara will not be available this week. That's probably the biggest one. It will once again be Jackson Stratton. We talked about that when the depth chart came out, and the possibility that Cade McNamara was not going to be able to make it a go. And with the long flight to LA, that appears to be the case. So they will be without him. That means a new captain will be out there, but it will be Brennan Sullivan back out there at the quarterback position, and something I think that makes us feel good. We're going to talk about UCLA a little bit more, but Kirk Ferentz with some really good praise. And this UCLA team has been somebody that I've been on. We mentioned this just the other day, everydayers. You remember this, and you look at that gauntlet that they were playing at the beginning portion of the schedule. Of course, we didn't know how good Indiana was at that time. They played LSU in a non-conference game. They had a really difficult schedule early on. And since then, it really started in the Penn State game. And I kept an eye on that one, because I had a wager on it, but because I knew that Iowa obviously was going to be facing UCLA. And he started to see that team show a little bit. They let one slip away against Minnesota, but back-to-back wins now on the road. Victory, of course, last week against Nebraska and the week before that against Rutgers. So I'm doing it with a couple of pretty big long road trips that they had. This team can move the football. They can do some different things, and a lot of praise by Kirk Ferentz. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Maybe one of my favorite moments, though, of the press conference was towards the end of it. And the question was just about, obviously, going out there, playing out west. We know the history has not been kind to the Hawkeyes traveling out west, and certainly for regular season games, you got to go back to the 80s, the last time that they won one out west. But asked about, the appeal of playing the game in LA. Is there anything there? Is there an appeal? And he said, not really. But it was very frank. They're going out there to play a football game. This is not a bull trip. It's not a celebration. This is another conference game, and it's an important one for this Iowa football team. And it's important to continue to stack up these victories and get those good graces, and to continue to pile up the victories and potentially get a return trip to Florida, have a nice bowl game, put a bow on what has been at times a frustrating season, but you can still have a lot of good things that come out of it. And Kirk said exactly that, talking about the trip out there. It's a business trip. They're going to go out there, do their thing, hopefully get a victory, and get back out on the road, get ready with a bye week in front of them then, and 15 days then in between games before they depart out to Maryland for the next trip with the bye week on the horizon after the game against UCLA. A couple other things. Talking about Xavier Nwankpa, I thought it was interesting. Obviously came in with a ton of accolades. Talked about Xavier a lot. I called a lot of his games in high school on the radio, and you saw a guy with incredible game-breaking speed. His ability to close on people with the football, either a runner or somebody trying to catch the football, is as good as I've ever seen at the high school level. And it just hasn't clicked at the level that I think a lot of people anticipated, myself included, that it would early in his career. But he's playing his best football of his career. And there's something to be said about the Iowa football program. It's not for everybody. I mean, you have to do things that are not always easy. There are no shortcuts in the Iowa football program. And as we see with Caleb Johnson, and Kirk brought him up as well. You see it with Xavier Nwankpa. You continue to do those things. You do the little things, and over time, it's going to start to click. It's going to start to hit, and you're seeing that from Nwankpa. And it's really good because he's a good kid. He's really easy to root for, a local kid. You hope for the best for him, and it feels like that light bulb's really come on. And being pushed by Cohen Entringer, that's another one. Also, talking about Deshaun Lee, a guy that was a non-factor against Michigan State. That just hideous loss that they had in East Lansing. Didn't play in the football game. Didn't play a defensive snap. And goes out there, plays his best game, has the pass deflection in the end zone, which would have been a touchdown without him yanking it out of there, and then gets an interception a little bit later. Those kind of things, those are the good stories. Those are the kind of stories that Iowa football needs if they're going to succeed. Well, speaking of succeeding, let's take a look back one final time at the win against Wisconsin. Years ago, Brett Bielema was talking about when he was at Arkansas, a game, what was it, beating Texas, I think it was, and he called it borderline erotic. I mean, that's what it was, just pounding Wisconsin in that kind of fashion. So let's take a look at the numbers, and another week and another just eye-opening numbers coming in from Pro Football Focus. So start with the offense and start at the quarterback position. There wasn't a ton there. 7 to 10 passing, 93 yards for Brendan Sullivan. He grades out as a 61. A 60.7 in the run game. Thought that was a little bit low, but all told, that's what you're going to get right now from this Iowa offense in the passing game. Here's maybe the most surprising element, though. The running back position. Your lowest graded running back of the three was Caleb Johnson. He grades out at a 63.2 overall. That's below average. A game where he scores 3 touchdowns, goes over 135 yards, and that's a below average performance. That's what the numbers from Pro Football Focus say. I didn't see it. Now, Kamari Moulton and Jazzion Patterson, both those guys played well. 76.8 for Kamari Moulton, maybe his best game in a Hawkeye uniform. And we saw Jazzion Patterson doing what he does, run hard, and those guys are going to be a big part of the offense, certainly next season. The fullback position, we don't talk about it a lot. Hayden Large, though, out there doing his thing, clearing things out and making his plays. So the wide receiver position, Jacob Gill had the touchdown. He's a top-ranked guy out of the group at the wide receiver position. Dayton Howard, a 57, Jarrett Bowie, a 55. 53 for Caden Weechin, and Seth Anderson, the lowest grade at a 46.3 out of him. Pass number of 44.8. Not great. Again, in a game where you throw for less than 100 yards, you don't anticipate it. And certainly when most of those yards go to the tight end, go in the tight end position, Zach Ortworth. And, Zach Ortworth didn't play a ton. He's not a guy that is going to wow you with speed. He's not going to be a guy that is a behemoth in the running game. He's just a good, solid tight end. He's a good football player. And he continues to make plays, and excited about his development, what he can still turn out to be, but a great performance out of him. Johnny Pascuzzi did not have a big performance, according to the numbers from Pro Football Focus, a 38.6 overall, kind of a surprising one there. Let's finish up on the offense with the offensive line. I mentioned earlier in the week, Jennings Dunker was one of the top tackles in the nation. He grades out with an 82. Logan Jones, a really good grade for him at a 76.9, and that was with the passing block grade. That was a 29.7. That shows you how good he was in the run game. Connor Colby was the same, really good in the run game. Bo Stevens coming back. He was over a 70 with a 71.7. They need those guys. Lowest graded guy was Mason Richmond, down at a 52 amongst all the offensive linemen that played, but still, you're getting production out of this group. Getting Stevens back is a big step forward, and we see that ground game. 329 yards rushing against the Badgers. That feels good. Let's jump over to the defense and get you those numbers from Pro Football Focus, see if they match up with what we were seeing with our eyes on the defensive line. It was Aaron Graves, top rated with a 71.9. Deontay Craig next up with the 66.7. Deontay Craig's a guy that hasn't had the season that I thought he would. Tackles for loss, getting the quarterback, those kind of things. Still, he's been incredibly solid throughout the course of this year. Will Hubert didn't play a ton. Only a handful of snaps. He's a third ranked guy on that one. Wyatt Black is a 59. And I just, when I see numbers like that for Wyatt Black, and knowing just the way that he controls the line of scrimmage and then gives the ability for the linebackers to make play, the defensive ends to make play, you got to know ball. You got to know the way and the scheme that Iowa plays, and it feels like at times Pro Football Focus doesn't have that. Jeremiah Pittman, Brian Allen, the lowest rated guys, but I thought both of those guys had a couple of moments, including Pittman, who made a couple of nice plays. Linebacker, it was Nick Jackson, of course, had the interception, 68.7 for Jackson. Tackle grade of 81, outstanding out of him. The lowest ranked guy out of all the linebackers that played, and it was Fisher, and Jaden Harold was out there, and Van Kirkricks. Jackson Rexroth was also out there. Lowest graded guy was Jay Higgins. What are you watching? Come on. Jay Higgins, lowest rated, just ridiculous. All right, let's go to the defensive backfield. There's Deshaun Lee at the top. Great game out of him. Mentioned that a little bit earlier. Xavier Nwankpa right behind him. Quinn Schulte had a good game, over a 70 grade for him. 65 for Cohen Entringer. Jamari Harris was a 64. And we saw some other guys out there a little bit, including the freshman, Jalen Watson, who checks in with the 63.2 in his limited snaps. Your lowest ranked defensive player in the backfield was Sebastian Castro. I don't get it sometimes. We continue here, Locked On Hawkeyes. We're going to hear from Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Going to talk with Doc a little bit about everything going on in this Iowa football team and how they're getting ready for the matchup against UCLA and making the road trip out there. We'll do that as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Guys, ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online. There's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's Hims, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan.
Doc Inner, Doc Trent Ken. Thank you for coming on, Scott Dochterman. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's become.
I can't believe that I'm getting followed by Tavian Banks. That's just a miracle.
Yeah, you're leading the way.
School, so I played against them in high school.
Did you really?
How'd it go for you, Doc?
We won one game. The final game I've ever played was against them when they kicked the poop out of us in the playoffs.
Nice. Good stuff. Well, Doc, look, you were there. You were in the press box to watch Wisconsin. You saw with your own two eyes. It's just a different offense with Brendan Sullivan on the field. Just the threat of him running the football. They didn't wow you through the air by any means, but he was accurate when he was asked to throw the ball for the most part, I thought. It's just a different offense with Brendan Sullivan, a dual threat quarterback on the field leading Tim Lester's offense.
Well, you can do it multiple ways, but I think the way that they do it by having somebody who's able to run, it really gives you a net positive from that position, which really hasn't been the case at Iowa for a while. I mean, if you can do it through the air, that's great. But in their situation, because you have a quarterback who's able to take off, it just changes the dynamic of the defense. And then when your offensive line can blow people up the way that Iowa did on Saturday, you really can see the positives of what Brendan Sullivan brings, and everybody's keyed on Caleb Johnson. Now they can't, and now you have two threats that can run in the backfield, and I think that really is a separator, and that's what we saw Saturday.
Big difference maker. You mentioned that line up front. What is it that you're seeing? I know you're deep into the football world. What are you seeing schematically? Yeah, we see the things, the shifts, the motions, those kind of things that are different, but what are you seeing in particular with the offensive line? The same group of guys and what goes from a decent run blocking unit a year ago to the elite level we're seeing this year?
Well, health is a major factor. I mean, they were really banged up last year. And of course, when they're not performing, nobody wants to hear that as an excuse, but it is a reality. But I think when you look, secondly, what's really important is that the minor tweak that Tim Lester made early in the season changed the dynamic of the running game. And that is that they went, instead of using outside slant and inside zone all the time, they went to a mid-size zone. And that's right, what old people like to call the off tackle. Mm-hmm. But it enables Caleb Johnson to get to that hole much quicker because it's you're not stretching it out, and then it enables the offensive linemen to get into their blocks and change their aiming points on the second level defenders so much easier that they're not constantly having to try to reach these guys who are much faster than they are, which is why that they could undercut the stretch or get to the spot before the stretch got there. So now that mid-sized zone is there, it has just been a godsend for this offense because we haven't seen blocking like this in a long time. And then, of course, Caleb Johnson's skill set, this is perfect for him because he's not necessarily a stretch guy as much as he is give him the ball, let him do one cut and run with it.
Yep, no question. Doc, I want to ask you about Drew Stevens. I was on for the last, decade. They've been very fortunate at the place kicker, and they've usually got a couple. One guy's really accurate from 40 and in. One guy's got a really strong leg, but hit and miss. Stevens is both of these guys, I think. I truly do. I mean, that kick that he missed, what was it, 54, 56, whatever it was, it had 10 yards on it, at least, Doc. I mean, that thing was going to sail through from north of 60. What are they comfortable with him sending onto the field? I know it changes week to week depending on conditions, but what do you think is his range?
I think he could I think he could hit 60. And legitimately. And I think it's just a matter of how comfortable are you if he hits the goalpost, like he did the other day. I mean, because he is good enough. But if you're trying it from 60, which is midfield, then you're giving it to the other team at midfield. If you don't make it, it's a lower percentage kick. Mm-hmm. But if you're at the end of the game, I know people very close to him were thinking that he should have been he got an opportunity at the end of the Iowa State game, even though it would have been a 60+ yard field goal. It's like that's a higher percentage than the Hail Mary attempt. And I don't know if he would have made it or not, but that remains to be part of it. And I think he is capable of hitting 60 anytime he's out there, weather permitting. And he's a pretty good player, no question about it.
UCLA this week, a team playing much better, of course, got the win against Nebraska, but they've been trending in a positive direction here over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Short trip, and this is not going to Lincoln. This is going all the way out to LA. I know you're going to be talking to Coach Ferentz here coming up in just a few minutes, but do you anticipate any changes, either practice schedule-wise this week or just anything they do in preparation with the short week?
Usually they have Thursdays off, and that's where the walkthrough will be, and it'll still be Thursday morning. And then, of course, they're going to fly Thursday instead of Friday. So that's going to be part of it for them. Of course, it's a longer trip. It's probably 3.5 hours in the air from Eastern Iowa. So I hope that they have, get their hydration in on the flight. But it's probably not that dissimilar from going to the next trip, which is Maryland, or going to Rutgers. I mean, it's just a little bit farther. They're going to play a little bit later at night, but now they've had a couple night games to get used to. So I don't see it changing their routine a whole lot. It's not like when they would go to Arizona, it was early in the season, and it was very late, 9:30 kickoff Iowa time. And it was also 100 degrees. I mean, now they're going in, it's an 8:00 Iowa kickoff in temperate weather. I think the length of the flight is probably a little bit of an adjustment for them, an hour and a half that they lose. But overall, I don't think that it'll be that big of a deal.
Doc, it's been somewhat of a revolving door at right corner on Phil Parker's defense. Do you think Lee kind of, with his game against Wisconsin, has taken back a hold of that starting position?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he played really well. That was kind of his game where it kind of justifies him being in that spot. And not just the interception, because that was a great play. I mean, you could see him reading it. At least I could from the press box, but where he sagged, where he saw the route, how he jumped it, and then of course took off and caught it with his hands and went up the field. I think overall that was a really good play by him. But I think overall he was much more consistent, and I think that's been the issue right now with Iowa at that cornerback position is people haven't been that consistent there yet. Now I think that they will be, when they get an opportunity. And I think Deshaun Lee is the first one, and then we'll see what happens next year. But, they'll be, not only John Nestor, who's injured, and TJ All, who's played, but Jalen Watson's gotten some run there. And I expect him to be fully, fully competitive for that position.
Well, we know that you're now covering college football as a whole nationally at The Athletic, along with your duties with the Iowa Hawkeyes. We get to see the rankings tonight for the first time. What are you keeping an eye on? What are you trying to ascertain out of what this committee says? Now, I don't like the show because they just lie to us and they'll change what they do every single week. But that aside, what are you going to be looking for this evening, Doc?
Hey, this show is all about you guys, man. It gives you something to talk
about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's if they were to keep it under the vest, you guys would be like, what?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think, what I want to see is how are the conferences stacked up? I mean, we expect there to be 4 Big Ten teams, probably in the top 12. I think we expect to see 5 maybe SEC teams in the top 12. Where are the teams that have one loss in the ACC and the Big 12, like in Iowa State or, with Clemson after its loss, or Pittsburgh and some of those teams? Where do they stack up? And, I think, we're all in for, a surprise, because traditionally we've gotten in where this time of year where you see like the teams with names and are potential either big bowl teams or playoff teams, and we follow them, and then the local ones. But now we're going to see where do people think of certain teams and programs nationally, and I'd like to see if Minnesota or Iowa or Illinois has some run, maybe gets the late part of the ends up at 25, and if that happens, that does change some of the dynamics for teams.
Go do your thing, Doc. Thanks for giving us the time that you did here today. We'll talk with you next Monday if your schedule allows. Thank you, Scott Dochterman. Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. See you, buddy. Scott Dochterman, as he had to leave a few minutes early, get back and cover that press conference.
That's Scott Dochterman as he joins us, and always appreciate the time from Scott Dochterman. He was getting ready at the time for the Iowa press conference. We talked about that one a little bit early on. We continue here, Locked On Hawkeyes. Let's take our first deep dive into UCLA. We'll take a look at the numbers from the Bruins, what the Hawkeyes could expect again Friday night, 8 o'clock kickoff Central Time, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. Well, let's hit them all. 7 o'clock Mountain. Hawaii? No, let's not go that far. We'll talk about the Bruins when we come back. Iowa, UCLA, Friday from the Rose Bowl. We continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes Podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. So I gave pre-alcohol a try when I was tailgating. Drinking before my first beer of the day, and I wouldn't believe how on top of my game I felt the next day. Got a couple of kids running around. You want to slow that down. You want to feel your best. Absolutely. And was able to do it with this. Step 1. Drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly, pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Just go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use the code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for checkout to get 15% off. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time and the Game Time app. There's something just special about being in Kinnick Stadium, and though we're down to just one game left Black Friday against Nebraska, Game Time has you covered for your tickets, football, basketball, and not just sports, theater tickets, and a whole lot more. Game Time also has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets that are out there. I love the all-in pricing. It's my favorite feature of the Game Time app, knowing what the total is going to be up front. How many times have you got to check out and you get that sticker shock that happens from time to time? You don't have to worry about that with Game Time. All-in pricing, toggle the feature, and know exactly what you're paying for your tickets. No more surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and make sure you use the code It's Locked On College. That's going to get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Would greatly appreciate it. Or if you're listening on the audio side, 5-star reviews helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. All right, let's take a look at the Bruins. And Garber's their quarterback. He's a good player. He's put together a nice season. He's been banged up this year, but he's a guy that can move around a little bit, will make plays down the field. He's aggressive, turns it over a little bit, but he is a guy that can definitely make plays, and I think that's where the concern lies, certainly in this one. You look at the team as a whole, 124th in the country in total offense, 133rd, that's last in rushing offense, but they do throw it. Passing offense, 63rd. Pass efficiency, 64. So this is a team that can move the ball through the air, and that's certainly going to be the concern going into this one. But maybe the biggest part of this UCLA team, when you look at them statistically, is what they look like defensively. Mentioned the improvements that we've seen going back to the beginning of October when they took on Penn State. And that gauntlet that they were going through, it started up Indiana, at LSU, Oregon, at Penn State. I mean, they were all over the place, big time matchups, but they started to play better against the Nittany Lions. And they let one slip away against Minnesota, beat Rutgers and Nebraska the last two times out, and it's been their defense. And specifically, their rush defense. Got a linebacker that's all over the field, a good, solid defensive line. They're sturdy up front. This is a physical team. And a year ago, that's kind of how they were built, as they had a successful year a year ago. And it's more the same this year for this UCLA squad. Defensively, 11th in the country in rush defense. They're giving up just 100 yards per game on the ground. Now, you can get them through the air. Is Iowa going to be able to do that? That's going to be one to watch in this one. Can Iowa make enough plays? And can Brendan Sullivan do enough in the passing game? Can the receivers get separation? The likelihood is we're not going to see Reese Vanderzee in this game. We're going to be, again, depleted at an already depleted wide receiver position. Maybe this is the game where we see Seth Anderson get involved a little bit more, because there's going to be opportunity certainly throughout the course of that one. Defensively, this team has been a struggle, though, on defense, on third down defense. In fact, they are one of the worst in the country. So Iowa getting those third and manageables, keep it 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. Third manageable, Iowa's going to be in really good shape. If not, that's where the concerns go. A couple other things, pretty good in the special teams area, usually an area that Iowa wins and at times dominates. The special teams for UCLA is pretty good as well. And Deshaun Foster getting the wins the last couple of weeks. Now, you do wonder if there's going to be a letdown after going to Nebraska and getting that victory. I think that there's a potential there for UCLA for that to happen. But this is not going to be an easy one. And this is not going to be kind of going back to about a month ago or said, oh, man, this is going to be able to cruise. It's a road trip. It's a long one. It's a place where Iowa normally struggles, out on the West Coast in the Rose Bowl. And we certainly all have memories of bad trips to the Rose Bowl. And let's hope this one changes against UCLA. We'll dive deeper into the Bruins here in the coming days, getting ready for that one. We got coming up this evening, Iowa women's basketball, their home opener against Northern Illinois. Thursday night, the men will be back in action against Southern in their second non-conference bye game of the season. A lot to get into. It's a busy time, and happy to be with you each and every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, and it doesn't matter who it is. Your favorite NBA, MLB, NFL team. We got you covered here. And not only that, you can also check out Locked On Big Ten. Craig Sheeman, putting the Big Ten first, does a great job of talking all 18 in the Big Ten. You can find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for being with us again here today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.